everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the More Than MS podcast. Now this episode is going to be understanding the symptoms. I mean, I would be lying if I said I understood, okay? I don't, I really don't. But we're going to try and understand. We're going to try and do that together. I've kind of understood mine, so I guess that's what we're going to be getting into. But before we do that, I just want to say, I know I look a bit of a greasy mess right now. I'm going off to a yoga class after I finish filming. My best friend, she's doing a new holistic yoga. Now, yoga is great. It's great for MS. It's great for coordination. So I'm very lucky that I have a best friend that I can just go to the classes, and she's amazing. So I've got that straight after. So I'm in my yoga gear. But yeah, so anyway, let's get into the symptoms. Now, with MS, there are so many different symptoms and they range between every single person. If I had 10 people lined up right now who've got MS, every single one of them will have a different symptom. They will have a completely different story, a different condition, a different symptom, side effects, whatever you want to call it, it will be different, okay? So, yes, there are times that we do share a lot, and I feel like we share a lot of this is my interpretation of it, right? It's just my personal opinion. But I feel like people with MS, and when I've spoken to people as well, and obviously with the community online, I almost feel that the mental symptoms we all share a lot in common. There's a lot that we all share. But the physical ones, those are the ones that can range massively and be extremely different for every single person. But the one that sort of connects us are the invisible symptoms. So I am going to be getting into what both of them are, what they could look like. So of course, I think without me saying, I'm sure even if you're listening and you don't have MS, you can understand and know what a physical symptom is. So, for example, somebody who maybe has trouble with their walking might have to use walking aids, a wheelchair maybe. And I know that's what I've had this myself. A lot of people, when I say I've got MS, I've actually been asked this question before, which is disgusting. But they just think what I've been asked was, when are you going to be in a wheelchair? I'm like, well, I don't know. I could be. I'm very aware that I have something. But also, how dare you ask me? I mean, I get you being blunt and whatnot, but it's something you don't ask that, do you? I don't know. Maybe I'm a nice person. Anyway, but yeah, a lot of people do instantly think, because when I've told people before, especially in my early 20s, I have MS, like, isn't that what like older people have in like wheelchairs? I'm like, no, that's what, maybe that's all you know. And I kind of knew from those moments, that's when I want to start educating. That's when I want to start doing it, because I was sick and tired of hearing, but you're so young. Oh, but isn't this what MS is? And I'm like, you don't have a clue. Listen, I barely understand myself either, because I'm only just learning that there's so many different types. But I want to break that stigma, okay? So yes, there are people who are in wheelchairs. Yes, there are people who are older. But yes, there's people who are younger, and there's also people that aren't in wheelchairs. But they have so much more. So yeah, that's one side of it, but it's not all of it. And the other physical ones might be, well, it can be, you might not have walking aids, but you could have, like, it's called drop foot, where your leg sometimes you can't like lift it properly. I mean, you can see that in somebody and you know it's there physically yourself. I've experienced that before, but I find that it only comes about when I'm either really, really, really tired and I just can't, my body is just exhausted. Like with fatigue, it comes very often if I'm feeling extremely fatigued, if I've been walking for a long time. I've noticed that my leg sometimes like struggles to like pick up, and I think I mentioned this in the first episode. I've had some nasty, nasty, nasty falls. I've actually really injured myself because of that one leg that just wouldn't do its job for 1 second. Like, I might be walking fine, let's say 2 miles. Not that I do 2 mile walks, but then one misfoot, one little step on my foot just struggles to pick up can equal a massive fall. So that's one physical one. Obviously my face paralysis, that was a physical one. And I think I was going to mention one here actually that can be physical but also invisible, which is it's on a little line. It's actually, this is one of the most common ones, and I was actually excited. It sounds weird, excited, but I was looking forward to coming on here and talking about this one particular symptom because I experience it, and I've had a lot of people before I did this podcast. I put out on my page, if you're happy to, can you share some experiences that you've gone through just to try and gauge a deeper understanding of different people and what they might be experiencing. And there's one that came up, and I'll let you think, those who've got MS, I'm going to let you think what could be one invisible but can turn physical side effects, symptoms, relapses, oh gosh knows, flare-ups, we're getting onto all of that. But what could be one that's really common? I'll give you time. Bladder. Now I know some of you will be like, oh yeah, let's get into that. What's the bladder story? I don't know. Bladder is a really, really common symptom of having MS. And when I talk about the bladder, I mean the inability to control your bladder, the inability to hold your bladder, the inability to fill your bladder. Because, your bladder, I think it's like 200, and I'm not good at maths, but mils or litres, I don't think it's litres, I don't know what one it is, but it's 200 something for your bladder to be full. And I was talking with my nurse because I feel like I drink a decent amount of water, but I had to go in for a bladder scan actually because I was struggling myself. And she said, I went there full bladder, and the most full I could get it to was 96, and she said it needs to be 200. But I said I drink and she explained to me, listen, sometimes because of your MS your brain tells your bladder that it's full when it's not. And I'm like, well, what? She said, yeah, so you actually sometimes, as with having MS, your brain cannot work out when your bladder is full. So it just tells it that it's full, but it's not. It's like lying to it. So this is why bladder training is actually amazing as well. Here's a little tip for you guys, because this is what my nurse said to me. Next time you feel like you need to go to the toilet, that feeling you get like, oh, need to go to the toilet, instead of going straight away, and I know it sounds crazy, maybe try and do it where you're at home, you're in a safe place, the toilet's right next to you, or wherever you are, you're at work, I don't know, wherever you might be in your day-to-day life, as long as you've got a toilet next to you, try this tip for next time. So when you get that feeling, instead of getting up straight away, try holding for 2 minutes. Try that for a week, just 2 minutes, just sit there with it, 2 minutes, then go, but make sure you have got a toilet right next to you. And then once you've done that for a week, try doing it in the following week, but for 5 minutes. So try that every day, 5 minutes. You've done that now. 3rd week, try holding for 10 minutes. Obviously the T and C's are make sure you've got the toilet. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. Make sure you have a toilet right next to you, just in case. But just try that. Let me know if you do. Let me know what you think. I was told to do that, and I have, and it actually does help. So I'm intrigued to know if it's going to help with other people. But of course, the bladder is a massive one, and I did not realise how common that was, but it is. But now we've gone into, we delved a few sort of bits and pieces into the physical symptoms. The bladder one is kind of invisible but can turn visible for obvious reasons if you don't reach that toilet. But the 3rd ones, the invisible ones, these are actually my most favourite ones to talk about because they are very prominent in my life. For fatigue. We've spoken about fatigue now. I think you've got a good understanding of that. Brain fog, I zone out sometimes. These things are very common in most chronic illnesses. It's not just MS. And also they can be common in things like, ADHD or people with, say, autism or anything that your brain is not neurotypical as such. Because by your brain's using so much power, it's going through so much. MS or not, if you've got any other condition, anything, your brain is exhausted. So naturally, that's why we get those feelings of fatigue and we get those feelings of burnout and brain fog. They are huge issues. But also another thing that I feel really strongly towards that I would love to get into, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information here. It's a little sneak peek of what the next episode will be. So are you ready? Why do I feel like I'm one of those, do you know those kids' TV shows where it's like, I don't have a child, by the way, but Jay, is it Miss Rachel or something, which goes, I'm waiting, and she's like, anyway, if you've got kids, you know what I mean. I know that from my my friend. She has a little girl and has it on the TV sometimes. Is that where I'm getting my talking like stuff from? I'm like, even though there's no one talking back at me, I'm waiting for a response. Anyway, I digress. The one thing that I'm looking forward to getting into, which will be on my third episode, is mental health. There's a huge link between mental health and having MS. And as we all know, do you know what? I'm not going to delve too much into this now because I want to save this for my episode next week. But as we all know, being diagnosed by itself is scary, but having to go through all of these symptoms all the time, the stress of the medication, going through a relapse, it's going to affect our mental health, and that's a massive, massive link. And I just want to put this out there now. Obviously, more is going to be discussed on the third episode. But I've battled with my mental health way before I had MS. Way before. And I'm not ashamed to say that, I've been on antidepressants. I've had therapy. I've done a lot of these things, but all because I'm so glad I did it, because it was like, the doctor explained to me, if you've got a broken leg, you'd go get help, you get cast, right? You'd go to the hospital. So there's no difference, there's no shame when it comes down to doing things for your mental health. It's the same, you're still caring for your body. But I don't want to get too much into that part now, but mental health is going to be very, very prominent within these episodes of this podcast because of how passionate I feel, because of my relations towards it. So we're going to save that for next week, okay, guys? But that's a massive visible symptom as well. But let's talk about flare-ups. Flare-ups are essentially where you've had the lesion in your brain or your spine and the scarring tissue, and you've then had a relapse, and maybe it's been a few years now where the relapse, so you had a relapse 2 years ago, but you recovered from it. However, that scarring tissue is still going to be there, right? It's like having a scar on your hand. Imagine having that scar, and when you enter the cold, that scar, even though maybe it's like healed and it's been there for like a few years, but do you ever notice it turns kind of like purple, or it gets like irritated because of the temperature? That is the exact same, but with the lesions on your brain or your spine. So they can get triggered by heat or the cold. And there's so many ways to manage this. We'll put a post on the temperature, especially as we're getting into the colder months. How do we look after ourselves? But this can lead, with these different climates and the changes and the environment that we're in, it can lead to flare-ups. Now, flare-ups essentially are, it's like a trigger. They're triggering those scarring tissues that caused the relapses in the first place. So I'm going to use an example just to try and make you guys, maybe if you don't know what it is, understand. But when I had that electric shock up my spine, and when I looked down, I'd get like the pins and needles, like I get this really weird fuzzy feeling in my feet, and also the shooting pain on my back, but mainly like I'd also get the fuzzy feeling in my feet. So that was about 5 years ago I had that relapse. And for the past 5 years, every time I look down, you'll notice when I've been doing it, I don't actually put my head completely down because I'm scared, because I still have it. It's stayed. Every single time I put my head down, I get this horrible, 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 fuzzy, weird pins and needles feeling in my feet. So that's never left. And I've gone to my nurse and I've said, like, am I still going through a relapse? Has it lasted 5 years? And she explained to me, no, like, you had the relapse that lasted when it was at its worst, when I got like that shooting pain on my back. That lasted for about like 2-3 weeks. But I've been left now with this thing where I look down and I get that fuzzy in my feet. And she explained, because it's scarring tissue, Danielle, it's never going to leave. What happens over time is it fades. And she got me to imagine like a scar on your hand. That will fade over time, but it won't disappear. So if you like knock it or something, or like irritate it, you'll feel that weird sensation against the scar. But that's like me, if I, for some reason, because it is in the back of my neck, I know it's weird, we talked about that mirror thing of like something up there affects down there or whatever. But if I do put my head down, that's like me knocking the scar, like the lesion. So if I move my head, so that's like me intentionally, like, say if it's my hand and like bang my hand on my scar. Sorry, I just moved the laptop. That will irritate it, make it happen. Now, when it gets really cold or really hot, without me even putting my head or my neck down, the fuzzy feeling happens, and it's because the heat's now triggering it. So what I'm trying to explain is there's the scarring tissue is never going to leave, and unfortunately we can't put like moisturizer or cream on it because I can't get into there. So it just has to do its own thing, heal over time, but it's going to get triggered. It's going to get triggered if you're doing certain movements where that relapse is, or through heat, or through cold. So that's a little bit on flare-ups. I've sort of delved into some of the physical, some of the invisible, physical that turns invisible, flare-ups, and there's probably a whole lot more that I can't remember right now. But that is the episode for today, talking about the symptoms, and I just want to give you a little preview, like I said, of what the following week will be, which is going to be surrounding mental health. So I'm really excited for you guys to sort of listen in on that, because it's not going to just be about MS. It will be about everything, my journey with my mental health. And we also do have some exciting stuff coming up as well, because not only will it just be me, it will be on the third episode talking about my story, but we do have some special guests. We're going to start going into guest episodes, so you don't just have to listen to me talking for ages. So yeah, we're going to have some guests on this podcast as well. And I'd like to do a few surrounding mental health because it's such an important factor. So I hope that's given everyone a bit more of an understanding of the symptoms. If you're still confused, so am I, because I don't understand MS, and I think you could ask anyone who does, and do we get it? No, but we're trying. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and remember, if you would like to subscribe onto my YouTube channel, you will get the episodes when they arrive each week, so you'll be notified. But also you can subscribe on Spotify as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you all next week.